in most social situations, and I'm talking, business and personal, that there are upsides and downsides to having status.
I got this non-quote, but rather paraphrasing from Naval Ravikant about status. Status is a zero-sum game. It's a very old game. We've been playing it since Monkey Tribe. It's a hierarchical. Who's number one? Who's number two? The problem with status game, you have to put somebody else down. And then he kind of concludes that status games are always going to exist and that they are necessary evil, so to speak. So my question to you is, whether you think they are actually necessary, and are they actually evil?
There's three lenses to look at it through, right? Lens number one is the evolutionary status. Like, how did humans stay alive long enough to procreate, right? Lens number two is more sociological. How do you actually get other things done outside of food and sex, which is the evolutionary game, right? How do you get other things, And in modern society, of course, on the sociological level, status sometimes comes with money or currency or some sort of tradable goods or tradable value. And that's already pretty well established. The final piece in the psychology piece, my theory, and I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of hard scientific anecdotes to share on this, but in my experience is not everyone wants to be on top. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing having someone go down in status. The assumption's being made there that they even want that spot. They want food and sex and money and clout and all those things, but there's a in most social situations, and I'm talking business and personal, that there are upsides and downsides to having status. Like, on one far extreme, you look at celebrities and they sacrifice privacy. In other cases, some people, this is going to sound kind of asshole, they just don't possess the mental aptitude or the grit necessary to lead. Now, there is a big difference. There is a difference between high status and leadership. There are people that, when I was in the military, you called me captain, right? Haven't been called that since it has been 15 years.
50, yeah?
15, yeah. 15 years since I've been called that. And it's when I first became an officer, people had to call me sir. People had to salute me. They get a commission. So it's a special piece of documentation signed by important people in the government saying that, there's a limited amount of people that commissions that are handed out each year. There's certain built-in status. It was not a renewable resource, on that particular week. In May of 2001, 2005 is when I pinned on captain. And, when I became an officer, though, it was the people that actually were the true leaders, and one of the spheres of influence was the non-commissioned officers. That was the sergeants. I forget what they call them in the Navy, but you got the bars and you got stripes. That's the basic delineation. Actually, in most countries, it's very interesting how that carried over cross-culturally. But so there's a difference there. So, well, the short answer to your question is yes, I think it is necessary, because There are certain people that don't want status, and there are certain people that are not equipped to be able to leverage and use statuses, frankly, on either an evolutionary scale or wrong place, wrong time. They don't know how to swim in those ponds. And if you look
Mm.
at like a tribal mentality, it typically would require being strong and smart.
Yeah, that's why I
And good
wanted to.
looking, actually. Strong, smart, and good looking.
Th-
That's
th- That's why I wanted to say that actually, don't status games work best when they are based, and I think we are getting into like some Jordan Peterson
mm-hmm.
discussions territory of like, don't status games inherently, weren't they based on competence, and the problem with them now oftentimes is that they are no longer, or the criticism of them is when they are no longer based on competence. Because I think if something is based on competence, so like how useful you basically are, then I think it makes sense that you are higher status. But if you are just playing some tricks to be on top, then the question becomes, is that
Well, the
not
data
evil?
just doesn't support that. I mean, if you we'll look at some major things, right? We'll look at military, government, and and business, right? Community, government, business. Those are three decent pillars, right?
Yeah.
In government, there are plenty of people that have status, and in the government, it's called a pay scale. As a civilian or as a military member, uh, and they have certain levels of powers that's granted with that. I challenge you to name one government where the person in charge is the most competent, right? So
Yeah, that's the problem with
competence is not.
politics.
I mean, yeah, I'll get political. Competence is not isn't necessarily rewarded.
Yeah.
That isn't reward. As I said, there's a difference between leadership and status, and I think that there's plenty of examples of people that that grew status through smarts, like Talleyrand. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was like French Revolution time frame. He survived and thrived from status and influence. He was able to make some pretty amazing things happen for a long time. He lived a long time. I think it was in the 70s or 80s when he died. Um, and I don't know if he was good looking or not, but there are plenty of like anthropological studies and sociology studies and people hanging out in tribes and people looking at how babies look at things and all these different things. And frankly, promotions in business and promotions in the government and promotions in the military. You know, looks. It's not confidence. You just look better than other people. You're more visually pleasing to other people. Maybe it's disarming. Maybe it's lust, but that has nothing to do with competence. You just look better. Now, my wife would say that when I started trimming my beard up and trying to shave my head on the regular, that it probably increased my status because I improved my looks.